Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today is Saturday, February 7th, 2026.
Wow, February already.
I know, right? If you are looking at your calendar wondering where the first month of the year went, trust me, you are not alone.
Not at all.
It feels like we just popped the champagne for New Year's and suddenly we are deep into the winter. But we're going to stop the clock for the next hour or so because we have a stack of materials today that paints a picture of a world, or specifically the Netherlands, that feels like it is living in two completely different genres of a movie simultaneously.
That is a great way to put it. It's a real split-screen reality this week.
Yeah.
We are looking at a source today that is essentially a tale of two realities. We're analyzing De Krant van Kameren, which is a very candid, very raw discussion involving Kamran Oela, the editor-in-chief of the Telegraaf.
Yeah.
And the contrast he draws this week is, honestly, it's jarring.
It really is. On one hand, we have the shiny, polished, high-definition spectacle of the Milan Winter Olympics.
Right.
It is all glitz, glamour, and what they are calling the Judo Leerdam show. It is the world as we want to see it. Heroic, beautiful, entertaining.
And then you flip the page, and you are in the gritty, dark reality of Utrecht.
A completely different world.
Totally. We are talking about a breakdown of authority, a police officer in hiding, death threats, and a very, very difficult conversation about culture and upbringing. It is the world as it actually is, messy and unresolved.
And sandwiching these two extremes, the Olympic dream and the street nightmare, is the absolute high-stakes chess game of the new Dutch coalition government. So our mission today is to unpack this week of extreme contrasts.
Yeah.
We need to figure out how we got to a point where we have a cabinet show and a Jeddah show dominating the headlines, while the foundational respect for authority seems to be cracking on the pavement in Utrecht.
It connects to a bigger theme for me. Appearance versus reality.
Oh, I like that.
Who is actually in charge? Is it the people on the billboards, the people with the gold medals, or is it the people threatening violence? That is the thread we are going to pull on today.
I love that. Let's start with the shiny object first, the hook that grabbed everyone's attention this week, the Milan 2026 Winter Olympics. But if you read the coverage from the Telegraaf, specifically from their reporter Lisa Schoenmaker, who is on the ground, you might think only one athlete is competing.
Right. Lisa Schoenmaker is there in Milan, soaking up the atmosphere, and she notes that the vibe is, well, it's specific. She calls it the Judo Leerdam show.
The Judo show.
Yeah. Now, we have seen star athletes before. We have seen Sven Kramer. We have seen Irene Wust. But this is different. This isn't just about skating times. It is about an aura.
An aura. That is a heavy word for sports. Usually we talk about VO2 max or lap time.
Exactly. But Schoenmaker argues that Judo sucks all the oxygen out of the room. It is a celebrity phenomenon that transcends the sport. And you can't talk about that phenomenon in 2026 without talking about the entourage. Or specifically, one person in the entourage.
You mean the boyfriend?
Jake Paul. Or, as the source material hilariously devoted, maybe we should call him Jaken.
Jaken. Wait, to make him sound Frisian.
Yes. It was a bit of a joke in the discussion. Gita is from the north. She has those Frisian roots. So calling this American YouTuber boxer megastar Jaken is a way of culturally appropriating him back into the Dutch fold.
That's hilarious.
It's a way of dealing with the surrealness of it all. But it leads to a genuinely fascinating observation about focus and celebrity power.
This is the part that blew my mind. The source poses a question. You have King Willem-Alexander, the monarch of the Netherlands, sitting in the stands.
The head of state.
A man who represents centuries of history and state authority. And a few rows away, you have Jake Paul. Who are people looking at?
And in 2026, the answer is not automatically the king. That is the shift. The source suggests Jake Paul pulls just as much, if not more, focus. It speaks to this fragmentation of authority we talked about.
Right.
The king has the title, but Jake Paul has the algorithm. He has the eyeballs. It is a clash of the old world and the new world, playing out in the VIP section of a skating rink.
It is wild to think about, but we have to remember, underneath the circus, underneath the Jaken jokes and the camera flashes, there is actually a race to be skated.
Oh, absolutely.
And the pressure on Judo Leerdam must be crushing.
It is immense. We have a date circled in red, Monday, February 9, 2026. This is the 1,000 meters.
It's a big one.
This is the race she has been preparing for 4 years. The source emphasizes that despite all the fame, despite the millions of followers, she's an athlete first. And if she doesn't win...
Does the bubble burst?
I don't know if it bursts, but the narrative certainly changes. If she doesn't take gold on the 9th, the criticism will be immediate. Too much Jake, not enough skating.
Oh, 100%. Too much distraction.
Exactly. The stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah.
She has other chances, like the 500 meters, but the 1,000 is her crown jewel.
But here is where the plot thickens. Because while everyone is watching the Jita show, there is a plot twist potentially brewing. A quiet assassin, so to speak.
Femke Koch.
Yes. The source tips her as the potential new skating queen. Why?
It comes down to the specifics of the distances. Historically, Dutch women haven't dominated the 500 meters. That has been the territory of the Americans, the Japanese, the Koreans,
Right.
the pure sprinters.
Right. The power skaters.
But Femke Koch has developed into a contender who can win goals on the 500 and is a serious threat on the 1,000.
So she could spoil Judah's party? On both fronts?
She could absolutely spoil the party. And if she pulls off a double gold, we might see a changing of the guard. It is the classic dynamic. The global superstar versus the quiet, focused performer.
The underdog, almost.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
It adds this layer of tension to the games that goes beyond just national pride. It's a civil war on ice.
I love that. Civil war on ice. It really highlights how much narrative we layer onto these physical feats.
It's all stories.
But speaking of civil wars and conflict, we have to make that hard pivot now.
We do.
We have to leave the pristine ice of Milan and the VIP stands and go to the Bollendak in Utrecht.
This is a jarring transition, but he's the one the news cycle forced on us this week. We are moving from organized competition to what Kamran Ula describes as a chaotic slide in societal norms.
Let's set the scene for the listener who might not have followed the minute-by-minute updates. What exactly happened in Utrecht?
The incident itself was an arrest. It happened under the Bollendak, that iconic bubbly roof near Utrecht Central Station.
Okay.
Police were arresting a suspect. During the struggle, a police officer made a kicking motion or actually kicked the suspect. Now, context matters.
Yeah.
The suspect was a woman, and the source notes she was wearing a veil or niqab.
Okay, so we have a use of force incident. Usually that triggers an internal investigation, maybe a debate about police tactics. But that is not why we're talking about it today.
No. The kick is almost a footnote now. The story is the reaction, the aftermath. That officer is now in hiding. He has been doxxed, his private information released, and he is receiving severe, credible death threats. He isn't just getting mean tweets. He has had to disappear for his own safety.
And this is where the source, editor-in-chief Kamran Ula, gets, well, emotional isn't the right word. He gets furious.
He describes himself as furious. He explicitly says, "I'm not just the angry man trope. I am truly furious."
Right.
And his fury is directed at the public reaction. The Telegraaf sent reporters out to the streets to ask random bystanders what they thought. And the responses they got were chilling.
What were people saying?
They were blaming the officer.
Yeah.
The sentiment was, well, he should have known better, or if you use violence and you get filmed, you have to expect this.
Wait, expect this? They mean if you do your job and it looks ugly on camera, you should expect to be hunted down and threatened with death.
That is the implication. And that normalization is what Cameron points to as the sign of a sick society.
Wow.
He calls it a slide down. When the average person on the street shrugs at death threats against a civil servant, the moral compass is broken.
But Cameron goes further than just blaming society in general. He gets very specific about who he thinks is driving this behavior. And we need to unpack this carefully because these are his words from the source.
Yes, he is very explicit. He identifies a failed upbringing, and he pinpoints a specific demographic, Muslim youths in big cities. He argues that among this group, there is a fundamental respect deficit for Dutch authority.
Now, hold on. Is he saying they don't respect authority at all? Because that seems like a broad brush.
No, and that is the nuance he tries to draw. It's a key point. He says they do respect authority, but only specific kinds.
Okay.
He claims these youths respect their own fathers. He explicitly mentions they would respect the King of Morocco. But when it comes to a Dutch police officer or a Dutch administrator or a specialized enforcement officer, BOA, the respect is zero.
So his argument is that it is not an anarchic rejection of all rules, but a selective rejection of Dutch state authority.
Exactly. He portrays it as a parallel hierarchy. In their world, the Dutch police officer is not a figure of authority to be obeyed. He is an enemy or a joke.
Right.
And Cameron argues that for this group, sending a death threat is normal. He says, just a few death threats by mail, no big deal. They don't see the gravity of it because in their circle, it is just how you express displeasure.
That is a terrifying concept that the tool of terrorizing someone has become as casual as sending a text message.
It is.
But if the street is out of control, what about the people above? The leadership? Because usually when your employee is threatened, the boss steps in.
And this is the second part of Cameron's fury, the failure of leadership. He is absolutely scathing about the Utrecht police chief.
Why? What did she do?
It is what she didn't do. She remained silent. For over a week after this incident blew up, she said nothing publicly.
But let me play devil's advocate here. If there is an investigation into whether the kick was legal, maybe she can't speak. Maybe she has to wait for the facts.
That is a fair legal argument, and usually that is the protocol. But the source argues that this situation transcended legal protocol. You have an officer in hiding. The Telegraaf's stance is, you don't have to defend the kick to defend the officer's safety.
Right, you can separate the two.
You can say, we are investigating the use of force, but we absolutely will not tolerate our people being hunted.
But she didn't say that.
Not on camera, not publicly. Eventually, there was a joint statement posted on the internal police intranet.
On the intranet?
A secure website for employees. Not a press conference, not a statement to the nation, just an internal memo.
That does feel quiet, underwhelming, to say the least.
The source speculates, and this is speculation, but it's heavily implied, that this silence is driven by fear. Pure fear.
Fear of what?
They suggest the police leadership is terrified of being held hostage by this minority group that threatens violence. They are afraid that if they speak out, the riots will start, or they will be targeted next.
So we have a situation where the enforcers of the law are afraid of the lawbreakers.
That is the conclusion the source draws. And they extend it to the politicians, too. They mention Mayor Femke Halsma and others.
Okay.
The accusation is that these leaders are quick to engage with mosque boards and have tea, but they fail to speak out loudly when this specific anti-police behavior occurs.
They call it double standard, right?
A massive double standard. They compare it to the recent report on antisemitism. When that report came out, there was an uproar. But even then, the source calls the uproar mild compared to the hypothetical.
Right.
Kamran argues, imagine if there was a report showing widespread discrimination against Muslims.
The country would stop.
Exactly. He says there would be emergency debates, talk shows filled for days, a national crisis. But when the violence is directed at the police or at the Jewish community, the source feels the political reaction is muted. They call it hypocrisy.
It paints a bleak picture. You have a street culture that normalizes threats and a leadership culture that normalizes silence. It feels like a deadlock.
It does.
But there was one detail in the source that showed the police aren't totally helpless. They did fight back, but digitally?
Yes, the SMS bomb. This is fascinating technology.
Explain this to me. Because SMS bomb sounds illegal, but the police did it?
It is a tactic they have used before, specifically mentioned in a case involving threats against a Feyenoord football director. Here's how it works. The police monitor the Telegram groups and social channels where the doxing is happening, where they're sharing the info, or people are sharing the officer's address and photos. Yeah. They scrape the data. They identify the phone numbers associated with those accounts. And then instead of knocking on 500 doors, which takes manpower and time they don't have, they send a mass text message to every single one of those numbers simultaneously.
And what does the message say?
Basically, we see you, we know who you are, we know what you are sharing. Stop now, or we will come and find you.
Wow. That is psychological warfare.
It is. It is the digital equivalent of a police helicopter shining a spotlight on a crowd.
Yeah.
It sends a chill down the spine. It says, you think you are anonymous behind your screen. You are not.
It is a reassertion of authority. We still have the technology.
Exactly. And the expert view here is that this is crucial. Because even if the officer made a mistake with the kick, and let's be clear, that is being investigated. Doxing and death threats are attacks on the state itself.
They're a different category of crime.
Totally. If you can intimidate the police into hiding, the state loses its monopoly on violence. And once that is gone, you don't have a country, you just have territories.
That is a heavy thought. Territories. It feels like we are seeing that fragmentation. And speaking of fragmentation, let's look at the people whose job it is to hold the country together. The politicians in The Hague.
Ah, the cabinet show.
We have a new coalition agreement. And if the Utrecht story was about the breakdown of authority, this story feels like it is about the manufacturing of authority, the strategy of it.
It is pure strategy. We are looking at a political landscape in 2026 that is incredibly cynical. Let's look at the personnel shifts first. The source highlights some very interesting moves.
Specifically, Dylan Yeshilgaz moving to the Ministry of Defense.
This raised eyebrows. For a long time, defense was the graveyard of careers.
Right. I remember the jokes, ping, ping, because the soldiers had to shout bang because they didn't have bullets.
Exactly. It was the Department of Budget cuts and bad news. If you wanted to kill a politician's career, you made them Minister of Defense.
Not anymore.
No, the world has changed. With the war in Ukraine, with global instability, defense is now a sexy post. Sex in a political sense.
Right.
It has a massive budget now. It has international prestige. You get to stand on aircraft carriers and shake hands with NATO leaders. So for Dylan Yeşilgöz and the VVD, this is a calculated move.
Okay.
It allows her to profile herself on security. It makes her look tough, competent, and international.
So she is using the ministry as a campaign poster.
Effectively, yes. And notice who didn't get the job. Ruben Breckelmans was expected to take defense.
Right. I remember that.
But he was moved to faction leader in parliament. The source calls that the hot seat for the crown prince. He is being groomed. But Yeşilgöz took the spotlight role.
And then we have D66. They took education.
With Marianne Letcher as the intended minister.
Mm-hmm.
And the headline there is money. Billions more for education.
Which sounds great. Who can argue with more money for schools?
Well, the source argues with it. They are incredibly skeptical. Their fear is that this money won't actually reach the classroom. They predict it will be hoarded by the school boards.
The bureaucracy trap.
Right. The layers of management between the ministry and the student. The source implies that D66 can say, look, we invested billions. But if that money just sits in the reserves of a school board, the quality of education doesn't change.
It's just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. It's the difference between allocating power and applying power.
Talking about look what we did, we have to talk about the billboards. This was a hilarious detail in the source.
The VVD billboards. The new coalition agreement was presented, and literally one day later,
One day.
I mean, the ink wasn't even dry. The VVD launched a billboard campaign celebrating their achievements in the agreement.
That is fast.
It's suspiciously fast.
Yeah.
It proves that the negotiation wasn't just about governing, it was about prepping for the next election.
Of course.
But the source critiques the execution. They say the billboards had too much text, like 5 or 6 bullet points.
Don't read and drive, right?
Exactly. The source, being from a newspaper, advises, learn from the Telegraaf, big letters, one message, make it punchy.
Keep it simple.
If you are writing a novel on a billboard, you have lost the audience. But the timing is the key. Municipal elections are 1 month away. This entire coalition agreement was timed to give the parties a boost right before the local vote.
It is all marketing. But let's look at the stability of this cabinet. Because on paper, it looks shaky. It's a minority cabinet or close to it.
It relies on support. And this is where we get into the most fascinating, cynical mechanic of Dutch politics in 2026, the splinter factor.
The source talks about the Marcusauer group.
Yes, or Group Marcuser. These are MPs who split away from the PVV. Now, normally a splinter group is a sign of chaos.
Right. Instability.
It implies the government is falling apart. But here, the logic is inverted.
How so?
Think about the incentives. These splinter MPs have no party infrastructure. They have no campaign funds. If the cabinet falls today and new elections are called, do you think they will get reelected?
Probably not. They'd get wiped out.
Exactly. They would get 0 seats. They would lose their salary, their status, everything.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So they are trapped. They represent the golden handcuffs.
Ah, I see. They have to support the cabinet to keep their jobs.
They will support the cabinet through anything. They are the most loyal supporters, not because they believe in the policy, but because the alternative is unemployment.
So, paradoxically, the weakness of these MPs makes the government stronger.
It makes it more stable, yes.
Yeah.
It is a stability born of self-interest. The expert insight here is that you don't need a coalition of friends. You just need a coalition of people who are afraid of the alternative.
Fear again. We saw fear in the police leadership, and now we see fear of job loss holding the parliament together.
It is the unifying theme. And it puts people like Rob Jetton in a tough spot.
The leader of D66.
He used to be part of that progressive bromance with Jesse Klaver of Groenlink's PVDA.
Right, the bromance.
They were the young green future. Now, they are opponents. Jetton is in the cabinet, or supporting it, and Klaver is the opposition.
So Jetton is stuck in the middle.
He is. Does he lean left, back to his old friend? Or does he lean right, towards the VVD and the stable majority provided by those splinter groups? It is a high-wire act, and watching him try to balance that is going to be the drama of the next few years.
It is a soap opera, the cabinet show.
Truly.
But while the politicians are playing chess and the athletes are skating circles, there's another group that is just trying to survive, the students.
The future of the country.
Yeah.
And honestly, the picture the source paints for them is pretty depressing.
We are talking about the housing crisis, but not just as an economic stat. The source talks about it as a cultural killer.
The numbers are stark. A shortage of 400,000 homes. Student rooms costing €700 to €900 every month. That is unaffordable for almost everyone.
So what happened?
They stay at home. They live with mom and dad until they are 25, 26, 27. And Conran argues this has a profound effect on their development.
It stunts them.
It does. He lists the basics. Learning to cook, handling your own finances. But it is more than that. It is the social independence.
The freedom to mess up.
Exactly. If you live at home, you are always a child in some way. You don't have that space to become your own person.
And you miss out on the chaos. The source went on this wonderful tangent about student pranks, and it felt like a eulogy, like they were mourning a lost art form.
It really did. They talked about how student mischief depends on freedom. If you are living in your childhood bedroom, you aren't plotting elaborate pranks with your buddies at 3 a.m.
Tell the story about the half-brothers.
This was a great example of students trying to trick the media. They contacted the Telegraaf with a sob story about two half-brothers who were reunited.
A classic.
It was tailored to pull on the heartstrings. A perfect human interest story.
Of course.
Exactly. But the Telegraaf has a journalist, Elaine Verberg, who did her homework. She checked the hometowns, checked the details, and she debunked it. It was a hoax.
Score one for human journalism over AI.
Right. An AI might have just published it. But a human smells a rat. But the better story, the one that really made me laugh, was the first dates prank.
Oh, this is a classic.
So, two male students, best friends, straight. They decided to sign up for the TV show First Dates.
Oh, no.
They pretended to be gay, and they pretended they had never met each other.
So they go on the date.
And of course, it is the perfect date. They have the exact same hobbies. They have the same humor. They finish each other's sentences.
The producers must have thought they'd struck gold.
The editors of the show must have been going crazy thinking we have found the perfect match.
And the whole time, they're just trolling the nation.
They're trolling everyone. And they pulled it off. It was a hilarious piece of performance art. But the point the source makes is that kind of shared mischief, that bond, comes from living together in student houses, drinking cheap beer, and having bad ideas.
If you are commuting 2 hours a day from your parents' house, you don't have time for bad ideas.
No. You study, you go home, you eat dinner with your parents, you sleep. It is efficient, but it is sterile. It kills the student culture, and it creates a class divide.
How so?
Because the only people who can afford to live in the city are the rich kids, the ones whose parents can buy an apartment for them. So student life becomes a luxury product. It is no longer a rite of passage for everyone. It is a VIP club for the wealthy.
That is a sad realization. We are losing the democratization of growing up.
We are. And before we wrap up, speaking of history and growing up, we have to mention a birthday.
Telegraaf.nl turned 30.
30 years. It sounds ancient in internet years.
The source talked about the origin story, and it is hilarious how scrappy it was.
1996. The internet was the Wild West. They launched the site in secret.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a budget for computers.
So what did they do?
They bartered. They made a deal with a computer company. Give us the hardware, and we will put your logo at the bottom of the website.
That is amazing. Powered by.
Exactly. And they built the whole thing in 6 months. They were in a race with NEC, another entity, and they got beaten by 1 week, but they got it up. It is a reminder of how fast things move. In 1996, they were bartering for desktops. In 2026, they are covering SMS bombs and AI pranks.
It really puts the timeline in perspective. We have gone from dial-up internet to a world where a YouTuber is more famous than the king.
And where the police have to hide from the public.
So let's bring this all together. We have unpacked a massive week. We have the Juda show in Milan, the cabinet show in The Hague, and the reality check in Utrecht. What is the synthesis here? What are we looking at?
I think we are looking at a society that is struggling to agree on what is real.
The one.
In Milan, reality is the image. It is Judah, it is Jake, it is the spectacle, it is perfect, and we love it. In The Hague, reality is the deal. It is the billboards, the coalition agreement, the political survival. It is cynical, but it works.
Right.
But in Utrecht, reality is the broken street. It is the officer who can't go home. And that reality is being ignored or glossed over because it is too ugly.
We'd rather not look.
We prefer the Judah show. We prefer the political slogans. But the cracks in the foundation, the failed upbringing, the loss of authority, the fear, those don't go away just because we change the channel.
It feels like we are prioritizing the packaging over the product.
That is it. We are polishing the outside, the billboards, the metals, while the inside is rotting a little bit.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with today. We talked about golden handcuffs keeping the politicians loyal. We talked about fear keeping the police silent.
The motivators.
Exactly. So if the government is held together by the fear of losing a salary, and the police force is held back by the fear of violence, who is actually running the country? Is it the leaders we elected? Or is it the people threatening to tear it down?
That is the uncomfortable question. If fear is the primary currency, then the people who generate the most fear hold the most power.
Think about that as you watch the 1,000 meters on Monday. We will see you in the next deep dive.